It is not what you think. Whatever you just assumed the thing was, the quality, the feature, the aspect of yourself that this person cannot stop returning to, set it aside. Because what I received when I sat with this energy today was not the obvious answer. Not the thing you would guess if someone told you there was one thing about you that had gotten completely underneath another person's skin and refused to come out. The obvious answers are beautiful. They are real. They are worthy of someone's obsession, and they are yours, genuinely and without question. But this is not about those. This is about something else. Something that you probably do not think of as remarkable because you do it without thinking. Something that does not require effort from you because it has never required effort from you. Something so deeply embedded in the ordinary texture of how you move through your life that you have never once considered it might be extraordinary to someone watching. To this person, it is the most extraordinary thing they have ever seen another human being do, and they cannot stop watching. Let me build to what the unexpected thing is, not to create suspense, but because the thing cannot be properly understood without the context of the person who is obsessed with it, who they are, and what their particular life has looked like, and what they have and have not encountered in the people they have known before you. Because the unexpectedness of it is not absolute, it is specific, specific to them, to what they have experienced, to the particular gap between what they have known of people and what you are presenting them with every time you are simply yourself in their vicinity. This person has been around a lot of people, not necessarily in the sense of being socially prolific, though that may be true, in the deeper sense of having accumulated enough experience of other people to have developed a working model of what to expect from them. A set of reliable observations about how people behave, what they say, what they actually mean versus what they present, what the gap tends to look like between the version of a person that exists in public and the version that operates when the public version is no longer required. They have a sophisticated map of human behavior, and you keep doing something that is not on the map. Here is what they notice: you are the same person in every room. I want you to understand what that sentence means before you dismiss it as too simple to account for an obsession, because it is simple. That is precisely what makes it remarkable. Simplicity of character, genuine, unperformed, structurally consistent, simplicity of being the same person regardless of who is watching or what is expected is one of the rarest things there is. Most people code switch, not consciously or maliciously. It is simply what people do in the social world. They modulate, they read the room, and they adjust what they present based on what they read. They become slightly more formal in certain contexts, slightly more casual in others. They amplify certain qualities and mute others depending on who they need to be for the specific dynamics of the specific room they are currently in. It is ordinary, it is even useful, it is what social intelligence looks like in practice for most people. You do not do it. Not because you lack social intelligence. You have extraordinary social intelligence. You read rooms with a precision that most people cannot match. But the reading does not produce adjustment. It produces awareness. You know exactly what the room expects, and you simply continue to be what you were before you knew. The awareness does not move you from your position. It just informs where you are standing. This person has watched you in multiple rooms, multiple contexts, multiple configurations of people and dynamics and unspoken social pressures, and in every single one, you were the same voice, the same quality of attention, the same willingness to say the thing you actually think, the same warmth, operating at the same temperature, regardless of whether the room warranted warmth or expected something more guarded or would have been more comfortable with something more strategically deployed. The same every time, and they cannot stop thinking about what that means. Let me tell you what it means to them specifically. They have been burned by inconsistency, not burned in the simple sense of having been surprised by it, burned in the deeper sense of having trusted a presented version of a person and later discovered that the presented version was a performance and the actual person was something different, of having built something, affection, investment, understanding, the specific interior architecture of knowing someone on the foundation of what turned out to be a curated display rather than a real thing. It cost them not just emotionally, it cost them in the more fundamental way of making the ground feel uncertain, of introducing a question underneath every new encounter with a new person that sounds like, which version of this is real? Of producing a low level wariness that they carry into new connections, not because they are cynical, but because they have learned through experience that people contain more distance between their public and private selves than they initially present. And then they met you and watched you across multiple rooms. And the question did not need to be asked because there was no gap to measure. Because the version in room one and the version in room two and the version in the room where everyone was watching and the version in the room where nobody was watching were not versions at all. They were just you. The singular, consistent, completely integrated you that does not have a public edition and a private edition because the distinction never got installed. What they felt when they understood this was not a small thing. It was the specific, almost physical relief of solid ground. I want to stay with this for a moment because I feel something in your energy that I want to address before we go further. You do not know you do this. That is the part that makes it the unexpected thing. You do not experience your own consistency as a quality or a virtue or an achievement. You experience it as simply being yourself, as the only way of being that has ever made sense to you, as the path of least resistance, in fact, because performing different versions of yourself for different contexts would require more energy than simply arriving as what you are and letting the room make of it what it will. To you, it is the easy thing. To this person, it is the rarest thing they have encountered in another human being. And the gap between those two experiences, your effortlessness and their astonishment, is exactly where the obsession lives. Because they keep watching for the seam, the moment where the consistency breaks and the performance reveals itself, the context that finally produces the adjustment they have been unconsciously waiting for, the one that would confirm their existing model of how people work and release them from the increasingly destabilizing conclusion that you might simply be a different kind of person than the ones they have known. The seam does not appear, the consistency holds, and every time it holds, the obsession deepens by exactly the amount that the absence of what they expected produced. The embarrassing truth of the experiment is that they have stopped waiting to be proven wrong and started simply enjoying being proven right. that the observation has shifted from investigation to something closer to devotion, that they are no longer watching to see when you will break. They are watching because watching you be exactly what you are, consistently and without effort, has become one of the most stabilizing things in their daily life. And here is what the experiment reveals about them that they have not yet examined. The fact that they are running it tells you something. People do not spend this kind of sustained, careful attention on things they are neutral about. The investigation was never really about determining whether you are real. It was about giving themselves permission to believe you are, about building enough evidence that the conclusion, which was already forming inside them the moment they first encountered your consistency, could be held without the suspicion that it was too good to be accurate. They needed proof, not because you gave them reason to doubt, because they have been given reasons by other people in other rooms to doubt the evidence of their own perception, because their model of human behavior, built through experience, had taught them that what looks like consistency usually turns out to be a curated presentation, and the curation becomes visible eventually if you watch long enough. So they watched, and the thing that is undoing them is not just that you are consistent, it is that they were prepared to be disappointed and you refused to disappoint them. That refusal, unintentional, effortless, probably invisible to you, has produced something in them that careful, considered, deliberately constructed attractiveness could not have produced. Because what they feel is not just interest, it is relief. And relief that comes from a person is one of the most intimate and binding things one human can receive from another. You gave them solid ground without knowing they needed it. Let me speak to what they do with this, how the noticing of this thing about you has been expressing itself in their actual behavior. They have been manufacturing reasons to observe you in new contexts, not obviously, not in a way that would be legible as what it is to anyone watching. In the completely plausible, entirely socially defensible way of someone who simply keeps happening to be present in situations that allow them to see you in environments they have not seen you in before, a new setting, a different configuration of people, a context with a specific kind of pressure or expectation that they want to see how you navigate. They want the data, not because they are calculating, but because they are at this point genuinely scientifically interested in the consistency, in whether it holds, in what the limit is, if there is a limit, in what room or circumstance finally produces the gap. They are running an experiment that they would be embarrassed to admit they are running. The experiment keeps returning the same result. You, consistent, unperformed, exactly what you were the last time. The embarrassing truth of the experiment is that they have stopped waiting to be proven wrong and started simply enjoying being proven right. That the observation has shifted from investigation to something closer to devotion. That they are no longer watching to see when you will break. They are watching because watching you be exactly what you are, consistently and without effort, has become one of the most stabilizing things in their daily life. Does this land in a specific person for you? Someone whose attention you have felt tracking you across contexts in a way that has more focus behind it than ordinary interest. someone who seems to appear in situations where they get to see you in a new light more often than coincidence entirely accounts for? Let me know in the comments. Tell me if you knew before this reading that someone was watching you like this. Tell me if this named something you had been feeling without being able to identify. And every time it holds, the obsession deepens by exactly the amount that the absence of what they expected produced. Let me speak to something else they have noticed, adjacent to the main thing, but braided into it in a way that cannot be separated. The way you treat people who cannot do anything for you. This sounds simple. It is not simple. It is, in fact, one of the most reliable tests of who a person actually is underneath all the parts of themselves that are performing for an audience of people who matter to them. Because performing warmth for people who have power or status or the capacity to benefit you costs almost nothing. It is socially rewarded and therefore maintained by ordinary self-interest. But warmth for the person at the edge of the room who has nothing to offer, for the person who everyone else has subtly organized themselves to overlook, for the person who is not anyone in particular in the specific social architecture of the context you are in, that warmth is not rewarded. You offer it anyway, not as a display, not with the quality of someone who is aware they are being generous and wants credit for the awareness, with the specific, unremarkable quality of someone who simply responds to people as people categorically without running the prior calculation of what the response will cost or produce. This person saw you do this once before they understood what they were looking at. The second time they saw it, they understood. The third time, they could not speak for a moment, because they had seen enough people perform warmth, and this was not performance. It had none of the signature. It had no direction, no audience, no moment where the warm person checked to see if anyone had noticed the warmth. It was simply warmth aimed at a person, because the person was there and warranted it. This detail, this small, ordinary, completely unspectacular detail of how you treat people on the edges of rooms has become one of the most significant things this person knows about you. And they have told no one because they do not have words for what it did to them when they saw it. Let me speak to the obsession itself now, not the pleasant, manageable, I find this person very appealing variety that most attraction involves. The other kind, the kind that has its own specific weight, that does not stay where you put it, that follows you into parts of your day that have nothing to do with the source of it. This person thinks about you at work. Not romantically necessarily, though that dimension may be present specifically. They are in the middle of something that requires their full attention, and you appear in the margins of it, not dramatically, just there. A brief, unwilled, completely unsolicited flash of something you said or did or were that their mind produced without being asked to. They set it aside. They return to what they were doing. It comes back. This is the texture of the obsession at this point. Not constant, not overwhelming, but persistent, present in the background of their days at a low but unignorable frequency, surfacing in the spaces between required attention, waiting each time with the specific patience of something that knows it does not need to force its way to the front because it has been given over time a kind of priority that it did not petition for. You are prioritized in their attention without having asked to be, without having done anything to engineer it. simply by being the same person in every room. I want to say something about what this means for you, not as instruction, as information. Someone sees you clearly, not a version of you, not the curated presentation or the contextually modulated edition or the face you put on for rooms that require a particular kind of face. The actual you, the one that is consistent because it is the only you there is, the one that does not have anything behind it that would surprise a person who looked long enough. This person has looked long enough. And what they found when they looked, the thing they did not expect to find, the thing that has produced the specific, sustained, cannot locate the off switch variety of obsession that this reading is naming, is simply that you are real, completely, structurally, all the way through. In a world where most people are at least partially performing, that realness has the quality of the unexpected, the quality of something that makes the person who encounters it stop and look again after that, and construct slightly transparent reasons to keep looking, and eventually stop constructing reasons because the looking itself has become something they do not want to explain away. They are watching you be real. And real in a person turns out to be the most compelling thing there is. They did not expect that. They do not know what to do about it. They cannot stop. One last thing, the unexpected quality of the thing that obsesses them carries a specific implication that I want you to hold. You did not earn this obsession, not through effort or performance or the careful construction of an appealing version of yourself. You did not cultivate it, plan for it, or do anything deliberate in the direction of producing it. You simply showed up as yourself consistently across enough contexts and enough time that someone with eyes clear enough to see the consistency finally saw it, which means the obsession is for the real thing, not a thing you built, not a thing you can accidentally dismantle by showing a new side of yourself that contradicts the performance, because there is no performance to contradict. What they are obsessed with is what is actually there. All the way through, that is the only kind of obsession worth having. And it is what you have.